In the heart of Detroit's forgotten industrial district, where rusted metal dreams go to die, two small voices were about to shatter the silence of a powerful man's perfectly ordered world. What started as a desperate call from a junkyard would unravel secrets buried for years, test the limits of compassion, and prove that sometimes the most profound connections are forged in the most unlikely places. Before we begin this incredible journey, type Amen in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Let's see how far this story reaches. The November rain hammered against the windows of the Sterling Industries Tower as Christopher Blake stood 60 floors above the chaos of downtown Detroit, his steel-gray eyes fixed on quarterly reports that spelled triumph. At 42, he had built an empire from nothing, transforming a failing automotive parts company into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. His corner office was a monument to success. Mahogany desk, walls lined with awards, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a god's-eye view of the city he had conquered. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Christopher normally ignored such calls, but something made him answer. Perhaps it was the late hour, or the strange persistence of the ringtone cutting through his concentration. Hello? His voice carried the crisp authority of someone unaccustomed to wasted time. Please help us. The voice was tiny, trembling, barely audible over what sounded like rain and wind. We're scared. We can't get out. Christopher's hand froze on his pen. Who is this? Is this some kind of joke? My name is Madison. I'm with my sister Morgan. We're 7 years old. We're at a junkyard. The man locked us in his trunk, but he didn't know we were here. Please, mister, we're so cold and hungry. Every instinct told him this was a prank, but the raw terror in that child's voice sent ice through his veins. Slow down. Tell me exactly where you are. I don't know. There are lots of old cars and big machines. We were just trying to get some cans to sell. Her voice broke into sobs. We haven't eaten since yesterday morning. Mommy couldn't buy groceries this week because the rent was due. Christopher's jaw tightened. He had grown up in poverty himself before clawing his way to the top through sheer determination and ruthless business acumen. But that was 30 years ago. He had left that world behind, built walls between himself and those desperate years. Now those walls were cracking. How did you get my number? It was the only contact in Mommy's phone besides her work and Grandma. It just says CBR, we thought. We thought maybe you could help. Please don't hang up. It's getting so dark and Morgan is crying. I'm not hanging up. Christopher was already moving, grabbing his coat with one hand while keeping the phone pressed to his ear. What's your mother's name? There was a pause, filled with whispered conversation between the two girls. Victoria. Victoria Hayes. Do you know her? The name hit him like a physical blow. Victoria Hayes. The only woman he had ever loved. The one he had left behind 20 years ago when he chose ambition over everything else. She had been pregnant when he walked away, but she told him she had miscarried. Had she been lying? Or were these children someone else's? Stay on the line with me, he commanded, his mind racing. Can you describe anything else around you? There's a big sign. Red letters. Some are missing. It says, Sal's Auto, something. The rest fell off. Sal's Auto Salvage. Christopher knew it. 20 minutes from downtown, in the industrial wasteland where Detroit's automotive glory had turned to rust. He was already in the elevator, descending toward the underground parking garage. Madison, I need you to listen very carefully. I'm coming to get you. Don't try to get out on your own. Those junkyards have dangerous equipment. Just stay where you are and keep talking to me. Okay. Her voice was so small, so fragile. Mister, are you a policeman? No, I'm just someone who's going to help you. His Mercedes roared to life, and Christopher peeled out of the parking structure, his normally careful driving abandoned. Rain slashed across the windshield as he navigated through evening traffic, the phone on speaker now. Tell me about your mom, he said, needing to keep the girls talking, needing to know. What does she do? She cleans offices at night, Madison answered, her voice steadier now that she had hope. She's really tired all the time. Sometimes she falls asleep with her shoes still on, but she always makes sure we eat first, even if there's not enough for her. Christopher's hands gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Victoria, who had dreamed of becoming a teacher, who had lit up every room she entered with her laughter, was now a night janitor struggling to feed children. And he was the man who had abandoned her to chase his fortune. "How did you end up in that car trunk?" "We go to the food bank every Tuesday, but they ran out yesterday. Mommy said we had to be strong until she got paid on Friday. But we were so hungry. We saw Mr. Patterson, he lives in our building, throwing away cans and bottles. We thought if we collected them, we could get money for food. We climbed into his trunk to reach the bags, and then he just drove away. He had his music loud. He didn't hear us yelling. Did you try to open the trunk from inside?" "Morgan found a button, but it didn't work. The car is really old. Everything is broken." Christopher's GPS showed 8 minutes to the salvage yard. The rain was getting worse, visibility dropping. "I'm almost there." "You said there's 2 of you?" "Yes. Morgan is my twin. We're the same age, same birthday and everything. We turned 7 in July, 7 years old, born in July." The timeline aligned perfectly with when he had left Victoria. The possibility that these were his daughters made his chest constrict with an emotion he couldn't name. Part guilt, part longing, part terror. "What does your mommy tell you about your daddy?" Silence stretched, broken only by the sound of rain and distant thunder. Finally, Madison spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "She says he had to go away. That he didn't know about us. That someday, maybe, he'd come back. But we shouldn't count on it because he has a different life now. An important life." Christopher's vision blurred. He blinked hard, forcing himself to focus on the road. "You're going to be okay, both of you, I promise. Morgan wants to know if you have kids." "No, I don't." The admission felt like a confession of sin. "That's sad, kids are nice, even when we're hungry we have each other. That makes it better." The innocence of her words cut deeper than any accusation. Here were children who had nothing, yet found comfort in each other, while he sat alone in his tower counting his billions. The rusted gates of Sal's auto salvage appeared through the rain. Christopher didn't bother with the locked entrance. He drove his Mercedes straight through the chain-link fence, metal screeching as it gave way. His headlights swept across acres of automotive corpses. Crushed cars stacked 3 high, parts scattered like mechanical entrails, heavy equipment looming like prehistoric beasts. "I'm here." "Madison, I'm at the junkyard. Can you hear my car?" Yes, we hear something." He drove slowly through the maze of metal, calling out through his open window. "Make noise. Bang on the trunk, anything." Faint thumping reached his ears. Christopher followed the sound, his heart pounding. There, a battered old station wagon, primer gray, sitting near a pile of tires. He jumped out, barely bothering to turn off the engine. "Madison, Morgan, I'm right here." "We're here. Please, get us out." The trunk was indeed locked, the interior release broken. Christopher looked around frantically, spotting a crowbar near a workshed. He jammed it into the trunk seam and pried with all his strength. Metal groaned and gave way. 2 small faces stared up at him, illuminated by his car's headlights. Identical twins with blonde hair plastered to their heads from the trunk's leak, wearing matching pink hoodies that had seen better days, their eyes huge with fear and hope and hunger. They were painfully thin, their cheekbones too prominent, their arms like fragile twigs. For a moment, Christopher couldn't move. He saw Victoria in their faces, the shape of their eyes, the curve of their chins. But he also saw himself in the determined set of their jaws, the way they held on to each other protectively. "You came," Madison breathed, and then both girls burst into tears. Christopher found himself kneeling in the mud, gathering these 2 tiny strangers into his arms, his expensive suit forgotten as they clung to him with desperate strength. They smelled like rain and rust and the sharp tang of fear sweat. Their bodies shook with sobs of relief. "I've got you," he heard himself saying. "You're safe now. I've got you." Morgan spoke for the first time, her voice even smaller than her sister's. "Are you taking us to Mommy?" "Yes. Where is she right now?" "At work. She cleans the Riverside office complex. She starts at 7 and works until 3 in the morning." Christopher knew the building. One of his holding companies owned it. Victoria had been cleaning his properties, walking past his name on the lobby directory, and he had never known. He carried both girls to his car, one in each arm, their combined weight barely noticeable. They were too light, dangerously underweight. How long had they been going hungry? He settled them in the back seat, turned the heat up high, and handed them bottles of water from his emergency kit. They drank like they'd been lost in a desert. "When did you last eat?" he asked gently. Madison and Morgan exchanged glances, a silent twin communication. "Yesterday morning, Mommy made oatmeal. We split a packet 3 ways." Christopher's jaw clenched. He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. "Tom, I need you to close the Riverside account immediately and set up a trust." "Yes, tonight. I'll explain later. Also, get me everything you can find on Victoria Hayes. Employee records, address, everything. And Tom, not a word to anyone." He disconnected and looked at the 2 girls in his rearview mirror. They had stopped crying but were huddled together, watching him with uncertainty and exhaustion. "Let's get some food in you first. Then I'll take you to your mother." "We don't have money for food," Madison said quietly. "I do. And right now, that's what matters." 10 minutes later, they were in the drive-thru of a 24-hour diner. Christopher ordered everything he thought children might eat: chicken nuggets, mac and cheese, grilled cheese sandwiches, fruit cups, chocolate milk. The girl's eyes widened as bag after bag was passed through the window. He parked in the lot and turned to watch them eat. They were methodical about it, taking small bites, chewing carefully, making it last. They had learned to make food stretch, to savor every morsel. It broke something in him to witness it. "You can have as much as you want," he said softly. "There's plenty." "We should save some for Mommy," Morgan said immediately. "She hasn't eaten either." Christopher's throat tightened. "We'll get more for your mom. I promise. You 2 eat." As they ate, he studied them more carefully. Identical in every way. Same blonde hair, same blue eyes, same small features. They wore their poverty like armor, their dignity intact despite their circumstances. They said please and thank you, used napkins carefully, apologized when they spilled. Victoria had raised them well, despite having nothing. "How long have you lived in Detroit?" he asked. "Forever," Madison replied between bites. "Mommy says we were born here." At Providence Hospital. The same hospital where Victoria had been rushed 20 years ago, bleeding, crying that she had lost their baby. Or babies. Had she kept the pregnancy from him? Or had she not known she was carrying twins until later? "Do you like school?" Their faces lit up. "Yes, we love school," Morgan said. "We're in kindergarten. Our teacher is Miss Rosewood. She's really nice. She gives us extra snacks sometimes because she says growing girls need energy." So even their teacher knew they were hungry. Christopher's anger built, not at Victoria, but at a system that allowed this, at himself for being blind to the suffering happening in the shadows of his empire. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Madison answered first. "A teacher like Miss Rosewood, so I can help kids who don't have enough." Morgan nodded. "I want to be a doctor, so I can make people feel better. Mommy gets sick sometimes because she works so hard." 5-year-olds with dreams of helping others, despite being the ones who needed help. Christopher felt something shifting in his chest, walls he had built crumbling. His phone buzzed with a message from Tom. "Victoria Hayes, address attached, single parent, 2 daughters, employed by Cleantech Services for 4 years, exemplary record. Current status, 3 months behind on rent, utilities on final notice, 3 months behind." While he had been celebrating record profits, signing deals worth millions, Victoria had been choosing between electricity and food for his daughters. If they were his daughters. He needed to know for certain, but looking at their faces, he already knew the truth. The timeline fit. The resemblance was undeniable. Victoria hadn't been lying when she called him 20 years ago. She had believed she miscarried. She must have been pregnant with twins and lost one, not realizing the other had survived until later. Or perhaps she had known all along and chose to let him go rather than trap him with a pregnancy. That would be exactly like her, sacrificing herself so he could chase his dreams. "Mister?" Madison's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Are you okay? You look sad." Christopher cleared his throat. I'm fine. I'm just thinking. Are you two ready to go see your mom? They nodded eagerly, carefully packing up the remaining food. Christopher drove toward the Riverside office complex, his mind churning. What would he say to Victoria? Would she even want to see him? She had kept his phone number all these years, listed simply as CBY, but she had never called. Pride? Fear? Or the knowledge that he had made his choice 2 decades ago? The office building rose 40 stories, glass and steel reflecting the city lights. Christopher parked in the visitor's lot and led the girls inside, past a security guard who started to object until he saw Christopher's face and wisely remained silent. The CEO of Sterling Industries needed no permission to enter his own building. They took the elevator to the 23rd floor, where Tom's information said Victoria was currently working. The doors opened onto a landscape of cubicles, all empty at this hour. The overhead lights were off, but the glow from the city provided enough illumination to see by. And there she was, Victoria Hayes, pushing a cleaning cart down the hallway, earbuds in, humming softly to herself. She wore a blue uniform with the CleanTech logo, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was thinner than he remembered, lines of exhaustion etched around her eyes, but still beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. "Mommy!" Madison and Morgan broke away from him and ran. Victoria turned, confusion crossing her face, then shock, then overwhelming joy. She dropped to her knees as her daughters crashed into her, all 3 of them dissolving into tears. She clutched them close, rocking back and forth, checking them for injuries, kissing their faces. Oh my God, where were you? I've been calling your phones. I called the police, I thought." Her voice broke. "I thought I'd lost you." "We're okay, Mommy," Madison said. "This man saved us. We were stuck in Mr. Patterson's car trunk and he came and got us out." Victoria looked up and her eyes met Christopher's across the hallway. 20 years collapsed in an instant. He saw the moment recognition hit her, the way her face went pale, her hands trembling as they held her daughters. She stood slowly, positioning herself between Christopher and the girls, protective instinct overriding everything else. "Chris?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Hello, Victoria." Silence stretched between them, heavy with history and hurt and questions neither knew how to ask. The twins looked between their mother and the stranger who had rescued them, sensing undercurrents they couldn't understand. "Mommy, do you know him?" Morgan asked. Victoria swallowed hard. "Yes, baby, I knew him a long time ago." "How did they get your number?" Christopher asked, his voice rough. Victoria looked down at her daughters, then back at him. "I kept it, just in case, for emergencies. I never imagined." She trailed off, tears spilling down her cheeks. "They're mine, aren't they?" He had to know, had to hear her say it. Victoria's silence was answer enough. Christopher took a step forward and Victoria flinched. The gesture stopped him cold. She was afraid of him. Or rather, afraid of what he represented. The man who had chosen money over love, who had abandoned her when she needed him most. "I thought I miscarried," Victoria said quietly, answering the question he hadn't asked. "When I called you that night, I was bleeding, in so much pain. They told me at the hospital that I'd lost the baby. It wasn't until 3 months later, when I couldn't shake what I thought was grief sickness, that I found out one embryo had survived and split. Identical twins. Monozygotic. The doctor said it was a miracle after how much blood I'd lost. A 1 in a million chance. Why didn't you tell me? You'd already made your choice, Chris. You wanted Sterling Industries more than you wanted a family. I wasn't going to use babies to chain you to a life you didn't want, so I let you go. I worked 3 jobs until they were born, then 2 jobs after. I put myself through night school, got my GED, tried to make something of myself. But it was never enough. It's still not enough." Her voice broke on the last words, despair and exhaustion bleeding through her careful dignity. Christopher wanted to argue, to defend himself, but how could he? She was right. He had chosen ambition over her. He had built his empire on the grave of their relationship, and now, confronted with the consequences of that choice, he had no words adequate to the moment. "Mommy, we saved you food," Madison said, oblivious to the adult tension. She held up the bags from the diner. "The man bought us so much, there's plenty for you." Victoria's face crumpled. "Oh, babies, you should have eaten it all yourselves." "We did eat. We had chicken nuggets and mac and cheese and everything. There's still lots left." Christopher cleared his throat. "Victoria, we need to talk, not here, not now. But soon. These girls, our daughters, they called me because they were trapped and hungry and desperate. That can't happen again, ever. You think I don't know that?" Victoria's voice turned sharp, years of struggle and pride hardening her tone. "You think I want my children going hungry? I do everything I can, Chris. Everything. But this city, this economy, this life, it takes and takes and takes until there's nothing left. I work 50 hours a week and still can't afford to feed them properly. So don't you dare stand there in your $1,000 suit and judge me. I'm not judging you. I'm trying to help. I don't want your help. I don't want your money. I don't want you swooping in like some savior when you've been gone for 20 years. We've survived this long without you. We'll keep surviving." "Mommy," Morgan's voice was small and frightened. "Don't fight. Please don't fight." Victoria immediately softened, kneeling to embrace her daughters. "I'm sorry, sweetheart, we're not fighting. Everything's okay." But it wasn't okay. Christopher could see it in the threadbare clothes, in the too thin bodies, in Victoria's hollow eyes. Nothing was okay, and pretending otherwise would only prolong their suffering. "Let me do this," he said quietly. "If not for you, then for them. Let me help Madison and Morgan. They're innocent in all this. They deserve better." Victoria stood, her body rigid with conflicting emotions. "What are you proposing?" "I don't know yet, but I'm not walking away again. Not from them." He paused. "And not from you." The words hung in the air, a promise or a threat, neither of them quite sure which. Victoria studied him for a long moment, seeing past the expensive suit and the CEO confidence to the boy she had once loved, the one who had held her and promised forever before forever got too hard. "I need to finish my shift. I can't afford to lose this job. You're done for tonight. I'll call your supervisor. Chris, please." He met her eyes, and for the first time in 20 years allowed vulnerability to show. "Please, let me do this one small thing. Let me drive you home. Let me make sure the girls are safe. Then tomorrow, when everyone's rested and thinking clearly, we'll figure out what comes next." Victoria hesitated, then nodded slowly. What choice did she have? Her daughters were safe, fed, looking at her with hopeful eyes. She could swallow her pride for one night. "Okay," she whispered. "Just for tonight." Christopher called Victoria's supervisor from his personal cell, and within 5 minutes, she had the rest of the night off with full pay. They drove through the rain-soaked streets in silence, the twins dozing in the back seat, full bellies finally letting them rest. Victoria directed him to a neighborhood that made Christopher's heart sink. Run-down apartment buildings, broken streetlights, bars on windows. This was where his daughters lived. This was the world he had condemned them to by walking away. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building that should have been condemned. Peeling paint, flickering hall lights, the smell of mold and desperation. Victoria unlocked 3 separate locks on her door, safety measures in an unsafe world. Inside, the apartment was clean but nearly empty. A second-hand couch, a small TV on a plastic crate, a kitchen table with mismatched chairs. But there were attempts at warmth, children's drawings taped to the walls, a small bookshelf with library books, a vase with plastic flowers on the windowsill. Victoria had made this place a home with nothing but will and love. Christopher carried both sleeping girls to their bedroom, a single room with 2 twin mattresses on the floor, covered in threadbare blankets. No bed frames, no dressers, just mattresses and boxes of clothing in the corner. He laid them down gently, and Victoria covered them with the extra blankets she kept folded at the foot of each bed. They stood in the doorway, watching the girls sleep, and Christopher felt something fundamental break open inside him. These were his daughters, his children, and he hadn't known they existed. He had missed their births, their first words, their first steps. 7 years of their lives gone, because he had been too focused on building his fortune to maintain the relationship that could have given his life meaning. "They're beautiful," he said softly. "They are." Victoria's voice was thick with emotion. "They're everything good in my life, everything worth fighting for. I want to know them, I want to be part of their lives." Victoria turned to face him, her expression guarded. "This isn't about what you want, Chris. This is about what's best for Madison and Morgan. You can't just appear in their lives and then disappear again when being a father gets inconvenient. They deserve stability, not a part-time dad who shows up when his conscience bothers him. I'm not planning to disappear. You've said that before." The bitterness in her tone was earned. "The night before you left for that business trip to Japan, you said you'd be back in a week. You said we'd figure out our future together. That was 20 years ago, Chris. You never came back." He had no defense. She was right. He had chosen his business deal over her, over their relationship, over the child he hadn't known was coming. He had rationalized it as necessary, as temporary, but temporary had become permanent and necessary had become abandonment. "I was wrong," he said simply. "I was young and stupid and terrified of being trapped in poverty forever. I thought success meant everything. I didn't understand that success without someone to share it with is just loneliness in an expensive suit. And now? What do you understand now? That I've built an empire on quicksand, that every dollar I've earned is meaningless compared to what I've lost. That those two little girls in there are the best thing I've ever been part of creating, and I didn't even know they existed." His voice cracked. "I can't get back the time I've missed, Victoria, but I can change what happens next. If you'll let me." Victoria's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "You don't know how many times I imagined this conversation. You showing up, wanting to be a father, wanting to make things right. In those fantasies, I always forgave you immediately. But real life isn't a fantasy. Real life is 7 years of struggling alone. Real life is wondering if we'll be evicted. Real life is telling my daughters that Daddy had to go away and hoping they'll never know he never wanted to be there in the first place. I would have wanted to be here if I'd known. Would you? Really? Or would you have resented us for derailing your ambitions? Would you have stayed out of obligation while your heart was somewhere else? Sometimes, Chris, leaving is kinder than staying when you don't want to be there." The words hit like physical blows. "Is that what you think? That I didn't want you? That I didn't love you? I think you wanted success more than you wanted love. And I can't blame you for that, She wiped her eyes roughly. "I just can't let you break their hearts the way you broke mine." Christopher reached out instinctively, then stopped, his hand hanging in the air between them. "I never stopped loving you. I was just too much of a coward to choose love over everything else. But I'm not that person anymore, or I don't want to be." Victoria looked at his outstretched hand, at his face, at the sincerity she wanted desperately to believe in. Finally she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "One chance, Chris. That's all you get. You break their hearts, you disappear again, and I will make sure you never find us. I don't care how powerful you are. Those girls are my whole world, and I will protect them from anything, even you." "I understand." "Do you? Because being a parent isn't grand gestures and money. It's showing up, every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Can you do that?" Christopher met her eyes steadily. "Watch me." For the first time since their reunion, something that might have been hope flickered across Victoria's face. It was fragile, tentative, ready to shatter at the slightest disappointment. But it was there. "It's late," she said finally. "You should go. The girls have school tomorrow, and I need to get a few hours of sleep before I figure out how to explain tonight to them. Can I come back tomorrow? After school? I'd like to take you all to dinner. Somewhere nice. Somewhere they can eat as much as they want." Victoria hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but Chris, tomorrow when you come back you need to decide. Are you their father, or are you a stranger doing charity? Because they deserve a father, not a benefactor. And if you can't be that, then tonight needs to be goodbye. I'll be their father. I promise." Victoria walked him to the door, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. As Christopher stepped into the hallway, she spoke one more time. "They're extraordinary, you know. Madison and Morgan. Despite everything, they're kind and bright and full of hope. They deserve the world." "Then I'll give them the world," Christopher said. "Or die trying." He drove back through the rain-soaked city to his penthouse, but it felt different now. The luxury that had once seemed like proof of his worth now felt hollow. The space that had been his sanctuary now felt like a prison. Christopher stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the Detroit skyline, and allowed himself to feel the full weight of what he had lost and what he might regain. 20 years of success that meant nothing. 20 years of climbing without understanding that he was climbing away from everything that mattered. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. Maybe redemption was possible. Maybe he could be the father Madison and Morgan deserved, the partner Victoria had needed him to be. The rain continued to fall, washing the city clean, and Christopher made a silent vow. He would not waste this second chance. He would not choose ambition over love again. Whatever it took, however long it required, he would prove that he was worth their trust. The question was, could he prove it to himself? As the city lights blurred through the rain-streaked windows, Christopher Blake, billionaire CEO, master of industry, found himself more terrified than he had ever been in his life. Because this time, failure wasn't about losing money or deals or reputation. This time, failure meant losing his family before he even really had them. And that was a loss he couldn't afford. Christopher didn't sleep that night. He stood at his windows watching dawn break over Detroit, his mind replaying the evening's revelations in an endless loop. Somewhere in this city, in a rundown apartment he now knew the address of by heart, his daughters were waking up. Were they remembering the strange man who had rescued them? Were they afraid he would disappear? At 6 a.m. his phone rang. "Victoria." "Hello? The girls are asking about you." Her voice was tentative, guarded. "Morgan wants to know if you're real or if she dreamed you. I thought, maybe you could come by before school, just for a few minutes, to prove you're not a dream." Christopher's heart lurched. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. "Chris, don't." 15 minutes. He made it in 12, breaking every speed limit, his Mercedes incongruous in the neighborhood's morning routine of beaten-down cars and city buses. He had stopped at a bakery he knew opened early, buying fresh muffins, fruit, juice, not knowing what else to do with the helpless feeling in his chest. Victoria opened the door before he could knock, as if she had been waiting by the window. She had changed into jeans and a faded sweater, her hair still damp from a shower. Without the exhaustion of the night before, he could see more clearly what the years had done to her. She was still beautiful, but it was a beauty earned through survival, not preserved through ease. "You came," she said simply. "I said I would. People say a lot of things." Before he could respond, two small bodies barreled into his legs. Madison and Morgan, dressed in matching school uniforms, plaid jumpers that were slightly too small, white shirts that had been washed so many times they were nearly gray. Their hair was braided neatly, their faces scrubbed clean, their backpacks patched with duct tape. "You're real," Morgan exclaimed, wrapping her arms around his knees. "Mommy said you might come back, but I was scared you wouldn't," Madison added, her face pressed against his other leg. Christopher set down the bakery bags and knelt so he was at their eye level. "I'm real, and I'm here, and I brought breakfast." Their eyes widened at the sight of fresh muffins, real orange juice, strawberries that weren't bruised or on sale. Victoria's jaw tightened, pride warring with practicality. But she didn't say anything as the girls eagerly attacked the food. "We usually have cereal," Madison explained through a mouthful of blueberry muffin. "The kind from the big bag that doesn't have a picture on it." "That's because it's healthier," Victoria said quickly, defensive. "Less sugar." Christopher met her eyes. "I'm sure it is. But sometimes a treat is nice, right?" The tension in Victoria's shoulders eased slightly. She poured coffee for herself and him, cheap instant coffee, but she served it in mismatched mugs like it was fine china. It was a small gesture, maintaining dignity in circumstances that tried to strip it away. "Tell me about school," Christopher said, sitting cross-legged on the worn carpet as the girls settled beside him. "What's your favorite subject?" "Reading," they said in unison, then giggled. We're the best readers in our class, Morgan said proudly. Teacher says we're at a second grade level. Mommy reads to us every night, Madison added. Even when she's really tired from work. She does all the voices and everything. Christopher glanced at Victoria, who looked away, embarrassed by the praise. That's wonderful. Reading is important. Do you like to read? Morgan asked. I do. Mostly business books these days, but when I was younger I loved adventure stories. Like pirates? Exactly like pirates. We have a book about pirates from the library. Madison jumped up and retrieved a worn picture book. Mommy says we have to be really careful with library books because they're precious and they belong to everyone. Christopher spent the next 20 minutes reading to them, doing his best with the character voices, making them laugh when he gave the parrot an absurdly high-pitched squawk. Victoria watched from the kitchen, sipping her terrible coffee, her expression unreadable. When it was time for school, the girls hugged him goodbye with an ease that suggested they had already accepted him into their small world. Children, Christopher thought, were dangerously trusting. It made his responsibility feel heavier. Can you pick us up after school? Madison asked hopefully. Mommy usually walks to get us, but it's really far and she gets tired. I'd love to, Christopher said, looking to Victoria for permission. She hesitated, then nodded. School lets out at 3. PS 47 on Henderson Street. I'll be there. After the girls left with Victoria to walk to school, Christopher sat alone in the quiet apartment. He looked around more carefully in the morning light. The walls had water stains from leaks the landlord probably ignored. The carpet was threadbare in the high-traffic areas. The kitchen appliances were ancient, humming and clicking in concerning ways. But there were also signs of love everywhere. The girls' artwork carefully displayed. A calendar on the wall with their school events marked in careful handwriting. A small jar labeled Fun Fund with a few coins and dollar bills inside. A growth chart drawn on the inside of a closet door, marking Madison and Morgan's heights with dates and small notes. Morgan lost her first tooth. Madison learned to tie her shoes. This was what Victoria had built alone. A home, a family, a life full of love if not luxury. Christopher's phone buzzed. His assistant, probably wondering where he was. He had meetings scheduled, a merger to finalize, a board presentation to prepare. The life he had built was calling him back. For a moment, just a moment, he felt the old pull. The safety of his office, the clarity of business decisions, the comfortable distance from messy emotions. It would be so easy to write a check, set up a trust fund, ensure Victoria and the girls were taken care of financially while he returned to his real life. But he remembered Morgan's question last night. Are you taking us to Mommy? The simple faith that he would help. The trust in her voice when she said, You're real. He remembered Victoria's warning. One chance, Chris, that's all you get. Christopher stood and walked to the window. Below, he could see Victoria and the girls walking down the street, the twins holding their mother's hands, skipping occasionally. They were too far away to hear, but he imagined their chatter, their laughter, the way they probably told Victoria everything about the pirate story. His phone buzzed again. His assistant, more insistent this time. Christopher turned off his phone. Watch me, he had told Victoria. Time to prove he meant it. He spent the rest of the morning researching schools, checking housing in better neighborhoods, looking into food assistance programs, utility assistance, everything he could think of. But he also knew from his own childhood that throwing money at poverty didn't solve the deeper wounds. Victoria had pride. The girls had dignity. He needed to help without making them feel like charity cases. It was a delicate balance he had no experience with. In business, you either won or lost. There was no room for subtlety, for feelings, for the messy reality that sometimes helping hurt and pride mattered more than practicality. At 2:30 p.m. he was parked outside PS 47, earning curious looks from other parents doing pickup. His Mercedes stood out like a diamond in a coal mine. He considered moving it, parking around the corner, but that felt like shame, like he was embarrassed to be here. He wasn't embarrassed, he was terrified. At 3 o'clock, children poured from the building like water breaking through a dam. Christopher scanned the crowd, spotting Madison and Morgan immediately. They were holding hands, talking animatedly, their backpacks bouncing. When they saw his car, their faces lit up. "You came!" Morgan shouted, running over. "You didn't think I would?" "Mommy said you might be busy, that important people have lots to do." Christopher crouched down. "You two are my most important thing, okay? That's a promise." Madison studied his face seriously, then nodded. "Okay, we believe you." The simple acceptance nearly broke him. They climbed into his car, chattering about their day. Art class where they painted turkeys, math where they learned about adding, lunch where the cafeteria served something called mystery meat that made them giggle. They were ordinary 5-year-olds having an ordinary day, and Christopher drank in every detail. "Where's Mommy?" Morgan asked. "She's at home, resting. I thought we could surprise her. Maybe stop somewhere on the way?" "Like where?" "I don't know. What do you two like to do for fun?" They looked at each other, having one of their silent twin conversations. "We like the park," Madison said finally. "But the one near our house has broken swings." "Then let's go to a different park. The biggest, best park in the city." Their eyes widened. "Really? Really?" Christopher drove them to Palmer Park, one of Detroit's gems, with its sprawling green spaces, functioning playground equipment, and families enjoying the crisp November afternoon. The girls were hesitant at first, staying close to him, but gradually their natural exuberance won out. He pushed them on swings until his arms ached, caught them at the bottom of slides, watched them navigate monkey bars with determined concentration. Other parents glanced at him curiously, this well-dressed man in expensive shoes standing out among the casual weekend attire of everyone else. "Higher," Morgan called from the swing. "Push me higher." "Me too," Madison echoed. Christopher pushed and their laughter rose into the afternoon air like music. When was the last time he had laughed like that? Pure, uncomplicated joy? He couldn't remember. After an hour, they collapsed on a park bench, the girls on either side of him, their small bodies warm against his sides. They smelled like sweat and sunshine and childhood. Morgan rested her head on his arm, suddenly quiet. "Are you our daddy?" she asked, her voice small and serious. Christopher's breath caught. He looked down at her upturned face, at Madison, who had gone equally still, waiting for his answer. This was it, the moment that would define everything. "Yes," he said quietly. "I am." "Then where have you been?" The question was asked without accusation, just genuine confusion. "Where do you go when you leave?" It was a fair question. It deserved an honest answer. "I was lost," Christopher said slowly, choosing his words carefully. "Not lost like when you can't find your way home. Lost like when you forget what matters most. I built a big company and made a lot of money, and I thought that was important. I thought that was success. But I was wrong. The most important thing is family. The most important thing is being with people you love. And I forgot that for a long time, I'm sorry." "But you remember now?" Madison asked. "Yes. You two helped me remember." "Good," Morgan said decisively, "because we need a daddy. All the other kids have daddies. Some of them have 2 daddies or 2 mommies. We just had Mommy, and she tries really hard, but sometimes she cries when she thinks we're asleep." Christopher's throat tightened. "I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" "I promise." Madison considered this, then nodded. "Okay, but if you break your promise, we'll be really, really mad. Like, really mad." "That's fair." They sat in comfortable silence, watching other families play. Christopher found himself studying them. Fathers tossing footballs with sons, mothers braiding daughters' hair on blankets, intact families doing ordinary things. He had missed 5 years of ordinary things. 5 years of parks and swings and scraped knees and bedtime stories. He couldn't get those years back, but he could make sure the future was different. "We should probably get you home to your mom," he said finally, though he wanted to stretch this moment forever. "Can we come back to this park?" Morgan asked hopefully. "Anytime you want." They drove back through the city as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The girls sang songs from school, slightly off-key, making up words when they forgot the real ones. Christopher found himself humming along, something loosening in his chest that had been tight for 20 years. Victoria was waiting at the window when they pulled up. She must have been watching for them, worry evident even from a distance. She met them at the door, scanning the girls for any sign of distress or disappointment. "Did you have fun?" she asked carefully. "Mommy, we went to the big park, with working swings." Madison bounced excitedly. "And Daddy pushed us really high," Morgan added. Victoria's eyes snapped to Christopher's at the word Daddy. He gave a small nod and something complicated crossed her face. Relief, fear, hope, all mixed together. "That sounds wonderful," she said, her voice slightly unsteady. "And he promised we can go back whenever we want." Madison continued, oblivious to the adult undercurrents. "And he said he's not going anywhere." "Did he now?" Victoria murmured, still looking at Christopher. "Can we show Daddy our room?" Morgan asked. "We made it really nice." "Of course, baby." The girls dragged him to their shared bedroom, pointing out their treasures with pride. A collection of smooth rocks from a field trip. Drawings taped to the walls, families with stick figures, houses with triangular roofs and spiral smoke, flowers with circular petals, a small shelf with a handful of books, clearly read many times based on their worn spines. "This is my side," Madison said, gesturing to the left mattress. "And that's Morgan's. We used to share one bed, but Mommy saved up and got us a second one for our birthday." Christopher's jaw clenched. Victoria had saved up. From what? How long had it taken her to scrape together enough for a second-hand mattress? How many meals had she skipped to give her daughters separate beds? "It's a very nice room," he said, his voice rough. "It's small," Morgan said matter-of-factly. "But Mommy says good things come in small packages. That's why we're small but good." Christopher had to turn away to compose himself. When he turned back, Victoria was standing in the doorway watching him. Their eyes met, and in hers he saw a challenge. "This is our life. Can you handle it? Are you strong enough for this reality?" He held her gaze. "I'm here," his expression said. "I'm not running." "Girls, homework time," Victoria said gently. "Say goodbye to your daddy." More hugs, tighter this time, as if they were afraid he might vanish if they let go. Christopher held them close, breathing in their little girl smell, memorizing the feel of their small bodies against his. "I'll see you tomorrow," he promised. "You promise?" Madison pressed. "I promise." Satisfied, they released him and bounded off to get their backpacks. Christopher followed Victoria to the door, neither quite sure what to say now that they were alone. "Thank you," Victoria said finally. "For today, for showing up. They were so happy. I was happy too. Chris, about what they called you. I told them I'm their father. Was that wrong?" Victoria bit her lip, struggling with competing emotions. "No. It's the truth. They deserve the truth. I don't want them to get hurt if you change your mind." "I won't change my mind. You don't know that. This is new and emotional and feels right in the moment. But being a parent is hard, Chris. It's homework and sick days and tantrums and endless exhaustion. It's not all playground visits and laughter. I know that. Do you? Because I've been doing this alone for 5 years. I know how hard it is. I know how easy it would be for someone who doesn't have to do it to just stop, to decide it's too much." Christopher stepped closer. "Victoria, listen to me. I spent 20 years building a company. I worked 18-hour days. I sacrificed everything for success. I know about hard. I know about pushing through when you want to quit. And I am telling you right now that being their father is not something I'm going to quit. Not because it's easy, but because it's the most important thing I'll ever do." Victoria searched his face, looking for cracks in his certainty. "They can't lose another person, Chris. They've already lost so much. Stability, security, the childhood they deserve. They can't lose you too. They won't." She nodded slowly, wanting desperately to believe him. "Okay, then we need to set some ground rules. I'm still their mother. I still make the final decisions. You don't get to swoop in and override me just because you have money and power. This is my family, and you're a guest in it until you prove you deserve to be more." "Fair enough. And the girls come first, always. Not your schedule, not your business deals, not your convenience, them. If that's a problem, it's not a problem, Victoria. I meant what I said. I'm here, fully, completely, whatever it takes. She studied him for a long moment, then opened the door. Then prove it. Don't just say the words. Show me. Show them. Be the man you're claiming to be. Christopher left the apartment with her challenge ringing in his ears. As he drove back to his penthouse, he made a series of phone calls. His assistant canceling tomorrow's meetings. His board, informing them he was taking an indefinite leave. His lawyers, instructing them to begin paperwork he wasn't quite ready to explain. That night he stood in his luxury penthouse and saw it clearly for what it was. A monument to emptiness. Awards that meant nothing. Success that had cost him everything. A life built on the grave of what actually mattered. Christopher made a decision then. He couldn't give up Sterling Industries entirely. It employed thousands of people whose livelihoods depended on his leadership. But he could restructure, delegate, build a company that didn't require him to sacrifice his humanity to maintain. He pulled out his laptop and began making plans. Real plans, the kind that would change everything. But first he needed to understand exactly what Victoria and the girls needed. Not what he thought they needed, but what they actually needed. And that meant talking to Victoria, really talking, without the girls as buffer or distraction. He texted her, "Can we meet tomorrow? Just us. I want to understand what you need, what they need, what I can do to help without overstepping." The reply came 5 minutes later. "The girls have school. I'm free between 9 and 2. But Chris, if this is about money, it's not. It's about everything else. Please." Another pause. Then, "Okay. Riverside Office Complex, the coffee shop across the street. 10 a.m. Christopher set down his phone and looked out at the Detroit skyline one more time. Somewhere in that sprawl of lights and shadows, his daughters were going to sleep. His daughters. The words still felt surreal. Tomorrow, he would begin the hard work of becoming the father they deserved. Tonight, he would plan how to make that possible. For the first time in 20 years, Christopher Blake went to bed with a purpose that had nothing to do with profit margins or market share. For the first time in 20 years, he fell asleep thinking about something more important than success. He fell asleep thinking about family. And for the first time in 20 years, he dreamed of a future that actually meant something. The coffee shop across from the Riverside Office Complex was a far cry from the upscale cafes Christopher usually frequented. Vinyl booths patched with duct tape, a laminate counter scratched from decades of use, fluorescent lights that hummed and flickered. The coffee came in styrofoam cups, and the pastries in the case looked dry and sad. Victoria was already there when he arrived at 10 a.m. sharp, sitting in a corner booth with a cup of black coffee, the cheapest item on the menu. She wore the same jeans from yesterday and a different worn sweater, no makeup. Hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked exhausted, and Christopher realized with a start that she probably hadn't slept much. Working until 3 a.m., then up early with the girls, living on anxiety and caffeine. "Hey," he said, sliding into the booth across from her. "Hey." She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup as if drawing warmth from it, though the shop was overheated. "You came. You keep saying that like you're surprised. I am surprised. Every time. I keep expecting you to wake up and remember your real life and disappear." Christopher signaled the waitress and ordered coffee and breakfast sandwiches, ignoring Victoria's protest that she wasn't hungry. When the food arrived, he pushed a sandwich across to her. "Please, you need to eat. I'm not one of the girls you can feed and fix, Chris. I know, but you're running on empty and we need to have a clear conversation. Humor me." Victoria took a small bite, then another, and Christopher saw how hungry she actually was. When was the last time she had eaten a full meal? She tried to hide it, eating slowly, carefully, but he recognized the signs of someone who had gone without for too long. They ate in silence for a few minutes before Victoria spoke. "What do you want from this conversation?" "I want to understand your life, not what I think it is, but what it actually is. I want to know what you need, what the girls need. I want to help, but I don't want to bulldoze over your autonomy or your pride. So I'm asking, what would help? Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. What wouldn't help, Chris? I'm 3 months behind on rent. The landlord has started eviction proceedings. The car broke down 2 weeks ago, so I've been taking buses and walking, which adds 2 hours to my commute each way. The girls' shoes don't fit anymore, but I can't afford new ones until next paycheck, assuming I still have a job after missing last night. The refrigerator is dying and the landlord won't replace it. The heating is unreliable. I owe the food bank $40 because I borrowed from the emergency fund when Madison got sick last month and had to see a doctor. She rattled off the list in a flat voice, reciting facts without emotion, but Christopher could see the toll it took. Each word was a weight she carried. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm Christopher had never experienced before. Every weekday at 3 p.m., he was outside PS 47 Elementary, waiting. The other parents had stopped staring, accepting his presence as routine. Madison and Morgan no longer seemed surprised when they saw his car, their joy now born from the comfort of consistency rather than the shock of his appearance. He learned their routines, their quirks, their personalities. Madison was cautious and thoughtful, always checking on others before herself. Morgan was bold and impulsive, diving headfirst into every experience. They were identical in appearance but completely unique in spirit, and Christopher found himself fascinated by the small differences that made them individuals. Victoria was slowly, carefully allowing him deeper into their lives. He joined them for dinner 3 times a week now, cooking in the tiny kitchen of their apartment while the girls did homework at the scarred table. He read bedtime stories, his voice growing confident in the character performances that made the girls giggle. He helped with bath time, learning how to braid hair through patient YouTube tutorials and Victoria's amused supervision. It was ordinary. It was mundane. It was everything he had never known he wanted. But beneath the surface, tensions simmered. The eviction notice still sat on Victoria's counter, ticking toward its deadline. The car situation remained unresolved. The girls' shoes were held together with tape and prayer, and Victoria's pride continued to war with desperate need, creating a stalemate that couldn't last. On a cold December morning, Christopher decided it was time to push the issue. He arrived at Victoria's apartment at 9 a.m., finding her alone, the girls at school. "We need to talk about practical matters," he said without preamble. Victoria looked up from the stack of bills she was sorting, her face drawn. "I know. The eviction is next week. I've been looking for new places, but everything requires first month, last month security deposit. I don't have that kind of money saved." "Then let me cover it." "Chris, please. I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to help you. There's a difference." Victoria set down the bills, her shoulders sagging with exhaustion. "Okay. Let's say you do. You pay the moving costs, the deposits, whatever. What happens next? I still can't afford the rent on a decent place. We end up in the same situation 6 months from now. I need sustainable solutions, not temporary fixes." "Then let's create sustainable solutions. I've been talking to people. There's a position available at Sterling Industries, administrative assistant in the community outreach division. It pays $45,000 a year with benefits. Day shift, 9 to 5, weekends off. It's yours if you want it." Victoria's jaw tightened. "Working for you. Working for Sterling Industries. You'd report to Jennifer Walsh, the director of community outreach. She doesn't know about our connection. She just knows you come highly recommended." "By whom?" "By me. But Victoria, you're qualified. You have excellent organizational skills, attention to detail, and 5 years of consistent work history. The recommendation is deserved, not charity. And what happens if we fight? If this co-parenting arrangement falls apart? Do I lose the job? No. That's written into your contract. Your employment is separate from our personal relationship. If things go south between us, which they won't, your job is protected." Victoria was quiet, clearly tempted but fighting it. $45,000 would change everything. The girls could have new clothes. We could afford fresh produce instead of canned. We could live somewhere without roaches and water damage. "But Chris, that feels like too much, like I'm being bought." "You're not being bought. You're being offered a fair wage for legitimate work. Victoria, you've been underpaid and undervalued for years. This isn't special treatment. This is what you should have been earning all along. And the apartment situation? Christopher took a breath. This was the bigger ask. I found a place. Rental, 4 bedrooms in a good neighborhood. Close to a better elementary school. Safe streets, working heat, reliable appliances. The landlord is willing to accept a guarantor instead of traditional deposits. Let me guess, you're the guarantor. Yes. But Victoria, before you say no, think about the girls. Think about Madison and Morgan growing up somewhere safe. Being able to play outside without you worrying. Going to a school with better resources. Having their own rooms instead of sharing mattresses on the floor. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. That's not fair. What's not fair? Using them as leverage. Using my love for them to overcome my pride. I'm not using them as leverage. I'm asking you to consider their well-being alongside your feelings. Yes, accepting my help means swallowing your pride. But doesn't their comfort matter more than your pride? The words hit hard, and Victoria flinched. You think I don't know that? You think I haven't been wrestling with this every single day? I want to give them everything. But I also want to maintain my self-respect. I want to be the mother who provides for them, not the mother who's kept by her ex-boyfriend. Then don't think of it as being kept. Think of it as co-parenting. I'm their father. I should be contributing to their upbringing. This is what fathers do. They provide housing and stability and resources. It's not charity. It's parental responsibility. Victoria wiped her eyes roughly. You're very good at this. Finding the arguments that I can't counter. I'm not trying to win an argument. I'm trying to help my family. Your family. Victoria tested the words. That's what we are now. That's what you've always been. I was just too stupid to recognize it. They sat in silence, the weight of the decision hanging between them. Outside, Detroit moved through its morning routines, oblivious to the transformation happening in this shabby apartment. If I say yes, Victoria began slowly, we need clear boundaries. Written agreements about what you're responsible for and what I'm responsible for. About how decisions get made. About what happens if things don't work out. I need protection, Chris. Not legal protection necessarily, but emotional protection. Structure that keeps this from becoming messy. I'll have my lawyer draw up a co-parenting agreement. Fair, balanced, protecting everyone's interests. And the job. I need to interview properly. Meet with this Jennifer Walsh, show her my qualifications, get the position on my own merits even if you open the door. Absolutely. I'll set it up for next week. Victoria nodded slowly, decision crystallizing. Okay, I'll look at the apartment. I'll interview for the job. I'll let you help. But Chris, if at any point this starts feeling like control rather than support, I'm out. I'll figure it out on my own again if I have to. Fair enough. That afternoon, Christopher picked up Madison and Morgan as usual, but instead of heading toward their apartment, he drove to a neighborhood 20 minutes away. Tree-lined streets, well-maintained houses, children playing in yards. The girls pressed their faces to the windows, taking it all in. Where are we going? Madison asked. You'll see. The rental house was a modest 2-story colonial, painted cheerful yellow with white trim. A small front yard with a maple tree. A driveway with space for 2 cars. Windows that weren't broken or covered with bars. Victoria was waiting outside, having taken the bus from their old apartment. She looked nervous, her hands shoved deep in her coat pockets. What do you think? Christopher asked as the girls spilled out of the car, staring at the house with wide eyes. It's a lot, Victoria admitted. Mommy, is this our new house? Morgan asked, hope and disbelief mixed in her voice. Maybe. We're just looking. The landlord, Mrs. Chen, greeted them warmly and showed them through. 3 bedrooms upstairs, 1 downstairs. 2 full bathrooms. A kitchen with working appliances. A living room big enough for a real couch. A basement for storage. A backyard with a swing set. The girls were silent, overwhelmed. They had never lived anywhere with stairs, with multiple rooms, with space to spread out. They walked through hesitantly, touching walls gently, as if afraid the dream would shatter. In one of the upstairs bedrooms, Madison and Morgan stood at the window. Christopher joined them, kneeling to their level. "What do you think?" he asked. "Can we really live here?" Madison whispered. "If you want to." "It's like a castle," Morgan breathed. Christopher's throat tightened. Their standards were so low that a basic middle-class house felt like royalty. Downstairs, Victoria found him in the kitchen. "The rent is $1,800 a month. That's triple what I pay now. I can't afford that even with the new job. I'll cover the difference." "That's $1,100 a month, Chris. It's insignificant to me, and it's parental support for my daughters. Let me do this." She studied his face. "No strings?" "No strings. Just a father helping to provide appropriate housing for his children." Victoria looked out the window at the backyard where Madison and Morgan were testing the swing set. Their faces were lit with joy, with hope. "Okay," she said finally. "We'll take it. But I want everything in writing." "Done." Mrs. Chen was delighted. They settled on a move-in date 2 weeks away. As they drove away, the girls chattering excitedly in the back seat, Victoria turned to Christopher. "Thank you. For this. For everything. I know I've been difficult. You've been protecting your family. That's what good mothers do." "I'm still scared." "I know, but I'm not going anywhere, I promise." Victoria nodded, and for the first time since he had returned to her life, Christopher saw something that looked like trust beginning to take root. Moving day arrived with the first snow of winter. Christopher had arranged for professional movers, but Victoria insisted on packing their belongings herself. It didn't take long. 7 years of poverty meant they owned almost nothing. Clothes, books, a few toys, kitchen essentials. Everything fit in a dozen boxes. Christopher arrived early with his Mercedes and a rented truck. The girls were bouncing with excitement, wearing new winter coats he had bought them, bright pink, warm, with real insulation. Victoria had protested at first, then relented when she saw how the old coats were literally falling apart. "Ready?" he asked Victoria, who stood in the doorway of the old apartment, looking around one last time. "I lived here for 3 years," she said quietly. "It was terrible in so many ways, but it was ours. We survived here. Now you'll thrive somewhere else." They loaded the truck quickly. The landlord watched from his office window, probably relieved to see them go. One less problem tenant, one less headache. Christopher felt a surge of anger. This man had let children live in squalor, had ignored broken heating and water damage, had threatened eviction while extracting every penny he could from desperate people. "Don't," Victoria said, reading his expression. "He's not worth your anger. Let's just go." The new house looked magical in the snow. Mrs. Chen had left the heat on, and warmth greeted them as they opened the door. The movers unloaded quickly, and then it was just the 4 of them in the empty house, their meager possessions looking lost in all the space. "We need furniture," Christopher observed. "We need a lot of things," Victoria agreed. "But we'll get there, slowly. Or we could get there today. There's a furniture store 20 minutes from here. They deliver same day." Victoria started to protest, then stopped. "Okay. But nothing extravagant. Practical, durable furniture, and the girls and I get to pick." "Deal." They spent the afternoon at the furniture store, Madison and Morgan testing every couch, every bed, every chair with the seriousness of seasoned shoppers. Victoria kept checking price tags, wincing at costs, but Christopher had already arranged with the manager to bill everything to him directly. By evening, delivery trucks were arriving. A sturdy dining table with 6 chairs, a comfortable sectional couch, real beds with headboards and nightstands, dressers for the girls' clothes, a desk for homework, kitchen items, bathroom necessities, everything a home needed to function. The girls ran from room to room, unable to believe this was real. Their own bedrooms decorated in colors they had chosen. Madison picked sage green, Morgan chose lavender. Their own beds with new sheets and comforters featuring their favorite characters. Their own closets with space for clothes that weren't hand-me-downs. Christopher found Victoria in the kitchen unpacking dishes with tears streaming down her face. "Hey," he said softly. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. That's the problem. I don't know how to handle everything being right." I've spent so long in survival mode fighting every day just to keep us afloat. Now suddenly, I don't have to fight. I don't know what to do with myself. Christopher pulled her into his arms, and for the first time, Victoria let herself lean into him. She was shaking, years of stress and fear and exhaustion finally finding release. "You don't have to fight alone anymore," he murmured into her hair. "That's what I'm trying to tell you, we're in this together now. I'm scared I'll wake up and this will all be gone, that you'll realize this is too much work, too complicated, and you'll leave again." "I won't leave. Victoria, look at me." He tilted her chin up so their eyes met. "I spent 20 years chasing success and ended up with nothing that mattered. You spent 20 years surviving and created two incredible human beings. You built something real, something that matters. I'm the one who's lucky to be here, not the other way around. You really believe that?" "With every fiber of my being." Victoria searched his face, then nodded slowly. "Okay. I'm choosing to trust you, don't make me regret it." "I won't." That night, they ordered pizza, enough for everyone to eat their fill without rationing. They sat around their new dining table, the girls talking over each other about their rooms, their beds, the swing set they'd play on tomorrow. Victoria was quiet, absorbing the normalcy of it all, the simple joy of a family dinner without the shadow of scarcity. After the girls were in bed, Christopher and Victoria sat on the new couch, exhausted but content. The house was still mostly empty. They'd need curtains, pictures for the walls, all the small things that made a house a home. But it was a start. "I start the new job Monday," Victoria said. "I'm nervous." "You'll be great. Jennifer is excited to have you." "Did you tell her? About us?" "No. I kept my promise. She doesn't know about our connection. As far as she's concerned, you're just a highly qualified candidate." Victoria nodded. "Good. I want to succeed on my own merits." "You will." They sat in comfortable silence, the house settling around them. Outside snow continued to fall, blanketing the neighborhood in white. It felt like a fresh start, a clean slate. "Chris?" Victoria said softly. "Yeah? Thank you. For not giving up on us, even when I made it hard." "You didn't make it hard. You made it real. There's a difference." Victoria leaned her head on his shoulder, and Christopher felt something shift. They weren't lovers. Not yet, maybe not ever. But they were partners now, united in their commitment to Madison and Morgan. It was enough. For now, it was enough. The following Monday, Victoria started her new job. Christopher picked up the girls from school, a routine that had become as natural as breathing. They did homework at the new kitchen table, snacked on fresh fruit from the filled refrigerator, played in the backyard until Victoria came home. She walked through the door at 5:30, still in her work clothes, professional attire that Christopher had helped her buy over the weekend. She looked different, confident, purposeful, no longer bent under the weight of impossible circumstances. "How was it?" Christopher asked. "Amazing. The work is challenging but interesting. Jennifer is wonderful to work with. I have an actual desk with a nameplate. Me, Victoria Hayes, with a nameplate. And Chris, the break room has free coffee." "Free coffee? Do you know how much money I've spent on bad coffee over the years?" Her excitement was infectious. The girls crowded around her and she scooped them both into a hug, spinning them around. "We made dinner," Madison announced proudly. "Well, Daddy made it. We helped." "You cooked?" Victoria looked at Christopher, surprised. "Spaghetti, nothing fancy, but edible." They sat down to dinner, and Christopher realized this was what happiness looked like. Not the fleeting pleasure of closing a deal or the temporary satisfaction of accumulating wealth. This, family gathered around a table, sharing a meal, talking about their days. Ordinary moments that were actually extraordinary. After dinner, after baths and bedtime stories, after the girls were asleep, Victoria found Christopher in the living room. "I need to tell you something," she said, sitting beside him. Christopher's heart clenched. "Okay. I've been angry at you for 20 years, carrying that anger like armor, using it to protect myself from getting hurt again. But Chris, today at work I realized something. I'm not angry anymore. Somewhere in the last few weeks you proved yourself. You showed up every single day. You kept every promise. You became the father the girls deserve. And I can't hold on to anger that doesn't serve any purpose anymore. I don't expect you to forget what I did. I can't forget it. I'm not forgetting. I'm forgiving. There's a difference. What you did 20 years ago hurt me deeply. But what you're doing now is healing us all. Even me. Christopher felt his eyes burn. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Maybe not, but I'm giving it anyway. Because holding on to it is exhausting, and I'm tired of being exhausted. I'm tired of fighting. I'm ready to just live. With you as part of our lives. If you still want to be. If I still want to be. Victoria, being part of your lives is the only thing I want. She took his hand, the gesture simple but profound. Then stay. Keep showing up. Keep being present. And maybe someday we can figure out what we are to each other beyond co-parents. I'd like that. They sat together in the quiet house, hands intertwined, the ghosts of their past slowly fading. Outside, Detroit slept, the city that had witnessed both their separation and their reunion. Inside, a new family was forming, fragile, tentative, but real. Christopher knew they still had challenges ahead. Trust fully rebuilt would take time. The girls would have questions as they grew older. Victoria would have moments of doubt, and he would have to prove himself again and again. But for the first time in 20 years, he was ready for the work. Because this wasn't work. This was love. And love, he was learning, was worth every effort, every sacrifice, every moment of uncertainty. As Victoria drifted off to sleep beside him on the couch, her hand still in his, Christopher made a silent promise. He would spend the rest of his life being worthy of this second chance. He would never again choose anything over his family. He would show up, every day, in every way that mattered. The junkyard call that had shattered his carefully ordered world had become the best thing that ever happened to him. 6 months later, spring arrived in Detroit with a burst of color. The maple tree in the front yard bloomed, the backyard came alive with grass that the girls ran through barefoot, and the neighborhood buzzed with the energy of renewal. Christopher stood at the window of what he now thought of as their house, watching Madison and Morgan play with neighborhood children. Real friendships were forming. Birthday party invitations arrived in the mail. The girls were thriving in their new school, their teacher calling them bright lights in her classroom. Victoria entered the room, her work bag over her shoulder. 6 months at Sterling Industries had transformed her. She had been promoted twice, her natural intelligence and work ethic impossible to ignore. She had friends at the office, plans for career advancement, dreams that extended beyond mere survival. "They're happy," she said, joining him at the window. "They are. You did that. We did that. Together." The correction made Christopher smile. Together. I like the sound of that. Victoria turned to face him, her expression serious. "Chris, I need to talk to you about something." His stomach clenched. "Okay." "The girls have been asking questions. About us. About why we're not like other families where the parents live together. About why you still have your own place even though you're here every day." Christopher had been expecting this conversation. "What did you tell them?" "The truth, that we're figuring things out. That families come in all shapes and sizes. But Chris, they want more. And if I'm being honest, so do I." "What do you want?" Victoria took a breath, gathering courage. "I want you to move in, officially. Not as a co-parent who visits, but as part of this family. Living here with us full-time." Christopher's heart raced. "Are you sure?" "I'm terrified, but yes, I'm sure. You've proven yourself 100 times over. You show up. You're present. You're an amazing father. And Chris, somewhere along the way, I fell in love with you again. Or maybe I never stopped loving you. I just buried it under hurt and anger. But it's still there. Has always been there." Christopher cupped her face in his hands. "I love you too. I never stopped. Even when I was too much of a coward to admit it. Even when I ran away. Even during the 20 years we were apart. You were always the one. I was just too stupid to realize it until I almost lost everything. You're not going to lose us, not anymore." They kissed, 20 years of longing and regret and hope pouring into that moment. When they broke apart, both were crying. "So I'm moving in?" Christopher asked, his voice rough with emotion. "You're moving in. Sell that ridiculous penthouse and bring your stuff here. Make this your home, our home." "What about the girls?" "Should we tell them together?" "Let's tell them at dinner tonight. Make it special." That evening, Christopher arrived with flowers and a cake from the bakery the girls loved. He had already called his real estate agent, already started the process of dismantling the life that no longer fit. His penthouse would sell in days. Luxury condos in downtown Detroit always did. But he didn't care about the money. He cared about this. At dinner, with the girls chattering about their day, Victoria cleared her throat. "Girls, Daddy and I have something to tell you." Madison and Morgan immediately went quiet, their faces serious. They had learned in their short lives that adult announcements often meant bad news. "It's good news," Christopher said quickly. "Really good news." "We wanted to ask you both something," Victoria continued. "How would you feel if Daddy moved in with us? Permanently. So he's here every morning when you wake up and every night when you go to sleep." The girls' faces transformed from concern to pure joy. "Really?" Morgan breathed. "Like a real family?" "We are a real family," Victoria said gently. "But yes, like families where everyone lives together." "Yes!" Madison shouted, jumping from her chair. "Yes, yes, yes!" Both girls ran to Christopher, nearly knocking him over with their enthusiasm. He held them close, overwhelmed by their acceptance, their love, the simple fact that he got to be their father every single day. "There's one more thing," Victoria said, catching Christopher's eye across the table. "Something we need to tell you." Christopher's breath caught. They hadn't discussed this part. Victoria smiled, reading his confusion. "Girls, a long time ago, before you were born, Daddy and I loved each other very much. Then we lost our way for a while. But now we've found our way back. And Daddy and I want to try being together again. Not just as your parents, but as partners. Is that okay with you?" "Like boyfriend and girlfriend?" Madison asked. "Something like that. Maybe more someday if we're lucky." "Does that mean you'll get married?" Morgan asked hopefully. Christopher and Victoria exchanged glances. "Maybe someday," Victoria said, "if that's what we all want. But for now, we're just happy to be together." The girls accepted this with the easy adaptability of children who had seen their world transform in 6 months. They returned to their cake, already planning where Christopher's things would go, which closet he would use, how they'd rearrange the house to make it his too. Later, after the girls were asleep, Christopher and Victoria sat on the porch swing, the spring evening cool but not cold. The neighborhood was quiet, lights glowing in windows, the sounds of domestic life filtering out into the night. "I want to marry you," Christopher said without preamble. Victoria turned to him surprised. "Chris, not now. Not tomorrow. I know we need time. I know we need to rebuild what we lost and create something new. But Victoria, I want you to know my intentions. I'm not here temporarily. I'm not here out of obligation. I'm here because I love you and I love our daughters and I want to spend the rest of my life proving I deserve you. You don't have to prove anything anymore. You've already shown me who you are. Then let me show you anyway. Every day, for the rest of our lives." Victoria leaned into him, and they swung gently, the rhythm soothing. "I bought this house 6 months ago thinking it was just a place for the girls and me to live. I never imagined it would become a real home. With you in it, it feels complete. It feels complete to me too, like I've finally found where I belong." They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars appear as the sky darkened. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed 9, ordinary time passing in an ordinary evening. But to Christopher, it was anything but ordinary. This was his second chance, his redemption, his family. 3 months later, on a sunny Saturday in June, Christopher officially moved in. His belongings arrived in a moving truck, not as many as Victoria expected. He had sold most of his luxury furniture, keeping only personal items and things that mattered. Awards went to storage. Designer suits were donated. The trappings of his old life shed like a snake's skin. The girls helped him unpack, arguing over where things should go, their laughter filling the house. Victoria watched from the doorway, her hand resting on her stomach where a secret grew that she hadn't yet shared. She had taken a test that morning, seen the positive result, and known immediately that this was right. Another chance at family, at completion, at the life she had dreamed of 20 years ago. She would tell Christopher tonight after the girls were asleep. She would watch his face transform with joy, with awe, with the realization that they were being given yet another blessing, another child, another chance to get it right. But for now, she simply watched her family, her daughters and the man who had finally become the father they deserved, create the home they all needed. That evening, with boxes finally unpacked and exhaustion setting in, they gathered in the living room. Madison and Morgan were on the floor with their coloring books. Christopher was beside Victoria on the couch, his arm around her shoulders. The TV played quietly in the background, ignored. "Daddy?" Madison said without looking up from her drawing. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything, sweetheart." "Do you remember the day you found us in the junkyard?" Christopher tensed slightly. They had never really talked about that day in detail. "I do. Why?" "I was so scared that day. We were hungry and cold, and I thought we might be stuck forever. But then you came, and you saved us." "You saved yourself, sweetie. You were smart enough to call for help." Madison finally looked up, her blue eyes serious. "But you were the one who answered. Out of all the people in the world, you answered. That's like magic." "It wasn't magic. It was luck, or fate, or maybe it was meant to be." "I think it was meant to be," Morgan added, joining the conversation. "Because now we have everything. A nice house and good food in our own rooms, and Mommy isn't sad anymore. And we have you." Christopher's throat tightened. "And I have you. All of you. Which makes me the luckiest man in the world." Victoria squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Soon, very soon, they would be even luckier. But that news could wait for tonight, for a quiet moment when they could process together what it meant to be starting over, building new life, creating a future that honored the past without being trapped by it. As the evening wore on, and the girls eventually went to bed, Victoria pulled Christopher back to the porch swing. The same spot where they had shared their first real conversation about the future, the same place where healing had begun. "Chris," she said, taking both his hands in hers, "remember how you said you wanted to marry me someday? Every day I remember. And remember how you said you wanted to spend the rest of your life proving you deserve us? I meant every word." Victoria smiled, tears now flowing freely. "Good. Because in about 7 months you're going to have another chance to prove it. We're going to have a baby." Christopher froze, the words not quite processing. "A baby? You're pregnant?" "I found out this morning. I wanted to tell you right away. But with the move and everything, I wanted to wait for the perfect moment. And this feels perfect." Christopher pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. His shoulders shook with sobs, joy, relief, gratitude, every emotion he had suppressed for 20 years finally finding release. "We're having a baby," he repeated, the word sacred. "Victoria, we're having a baby. We are. Another chance. Another blessing. Another piece of our family." They held each other as night deepened around them, as the neighborhood settled into sleep, as their daughters dreamed safe dreams in their warm beds. This was redemption. This was grace. This was love proving that it could survive anything, even 20 years of separation and pain. The junkyard call that had changed everything had led them here, to this porch swing, to this embrace, to this moment where past and future converged into a present filled with hope. Christopher thought about the man he had been 6 months ago, successful but empty, wealthy but alone, convinced he had everything when he had nothing that mattered. He thought about the terrified voice on the phone that night, a 7-year-old girl begging for help, not knowing she was calling her father, not knowing she was saving him as much as he was saving her. He thought about Victoria, who had survived poverty and abandonment and single parenthood with grace and strength he could never match. who had every reason to hate him but chose forgiveness instead, who had opened her life and her heart to give him another chance. And he thought about Madison and Morgan, sleeping peacefully upstairs, who had accepted him with the uncomplicated love of children, who called him daddy without hesitation, who had shown him what truly mattered in life. "Thank you," he whispered into Victoria's hair. "For what?" "For answering when I came back. For letting me in. For giving me the family I didn't deserve but will spend my life earning. You already earned it, Chris. Every day you showed up, every promise you kept, every moment you chose us over everything else. You earned it 100 times over." They rocked gently on the swing, creating plans for the future, a wedding, perhaps in the fall, a nursery to prepare, telling Madison and Morgan they would be big sisters, expanding their family from 3 to 5, from broken to whole, from what was lost to what was found. In the distance, Detroit's skyline glowed against the night sky. The city where Christopher had built his empire now witnessed him building something far more valuable, a family forged from second chances, sustained by love, and proved by the simple act of showing up every day, no matter what. The junkyard that had held his daughters in fear now seemed like the beginning of their story, not a tragedy but a turning point. The desperate call from terrified children had been answered by a father who didn't know he was a father. And in answering, he had saved not just them, but himself. As the spring night wrapped around them, Christopher Blake, once the loneliest billionaire in Detroit, now the richest man in ways that actually mattered, held his growing family close and knew he was finally, truly home.